The anime begins with a holy knight named Iska freeing a witch named Sisbell Nebulous the Nine, who the Empire captured. Afterward, he gave a little money to Sisbell and asked her to run away from there immediately. Unfortunately, his action was discovered by the Empire, so he was summoned by the Apostle the Eighth Council to take responsibility for his actions. He was eventually imprisoned and removed from his position as a holy knight of the Empire. 1 year later, Iska is offered parole by the Empire. Soon after, he was asked to appear in front of the Apostle the Eighth Council to be allowed to atone for his sins. Iska was ordered to fight a pure-blood witch, the main descendant of the Great Witch Nebulous. He is reminded that the Nebulous Empire once turned their empire into a lake of fire. They also tell that the descendants of the Great Witches, purebloods, have very strong spirit magic power. Iska knows this because he has often fought witches. However, he was again reminded that the opponent he would face this time was the strongest witch, who was dubbed the Ice Witch of Destruction. After accepting it, Iska was finally released, and his sword returned to him. He was allowed to invite 3 people from his previous unit to complete the mission. In the cafeteria, a woman named Nene Alkastone was busy working. A few moments later, a man named Jin Shulargan called out. Jin said that Iska had been released and was heading to the dormitory. Tomorrow morning they must prepare to carry out a mission together with Iska. The next morning, Iska was seen waiting for his friend somewhere. Not long after, Jin said he was used to Iska's impromptu requests. Then there was a car that stopped near them. It turned out that the driver was Nene, who immediately got off and hugged Iska. At the same time, a woman named Miss Class also came, but she fell in front of them all because she was in a hurry and couldn't wait to get together with her friends. Miss said that the 3rd Division, Unit 907, the Human Defense Force, has now regrouped after a year apart. Then they set off in the car Nene brought to go to the forest. On the way, Iska and his group discussed their mission to be carried out. They have to conquer a very powerful witch, namely the descendants of the Great Witch Nebulous, who is dubbed the Ice Witch of Destruction. Miss said that Apostle the Eighth had framed Iska by giving him this mission because they could no longer deal with it. According to the information that Miss knew, the witch's first appearance was in the northern city of Ubel. It is said that the witch is the strongest spirit user in history and can penetrate the ranks of the Empire's troops alone. Jin said that the Sovereign Nebulous didn't know about Iska's information and reputation yet. According to him, Iska was an unexpected figure who could surprise the Sovereign of Nebulous. Nene said sometime after becoming a holy knight, Iska was immediately imprisoned so that information about him had not spread. Jin also confirmed this so that the witches would be careless. Therefore Iska was sent by Apostle the Eighth to carry out this mission. Jin explained that if Apostle the Eighth depended on Iska, they would have run out of ways to fight the witches. Not long after, Iska and his group arrived at a reactor in the middle of the forest. It turned out that the reactor was unfinished because many spirit users attacked it. The guards there focused more on fighting spirit users than finishing the reactor. Jin then said the dispute between the Empire and Nebulous was because of the reactor because when the Empire built the reactor, the Nebulous attacked it. Afterward, the Empire made weapons against them, so there was an endless war. After that, Iska and his group left the reactor and headed into the forest. On the way, Miss received news from the front line that there had been no sign of a spirit user attacking them. At the same time, their car got a sudden attack. They immediately got out of the car to avoid the attack. They were surprised because there was an attack in the Empire's territory, then guessed that a spirit user had secretly penetrated the army's defenses and arrived in the forest of the Empire's territory. Not long after, a burst of fire suddenly appeared from behind them. Iska immediately took action using his sword. With one slash, he could destroy the flames. Seeing that, a pair of witches in red robes were surprised that Iska could cut spirits with his sword. Jin immediately fired his weapons at the witches, but his bullets were blocked by the wind magic created by the enemy. Then several mounds of earth appeared, which turned out to be from each witch in red robes. Nene immediately attacked from the car's direction, using hundreds of fire bullets aimed at the witches, resulting in a huge explosion. On the other side of the distance, 2 witches named Rin and Aliceliese Nebulous the Nine are watching their fight. Then Rin tried to jump into the battle arena, which was still shrouded in dark smoke from the explosion. Iska and friends were about to take advantage of that moment to attack the witches, but one of the witches created a fireball and threw it at Iska. Luckily, he could jump to avoid his attack, then kill the witch. He immediately got up and attacked the female witch who was nearby. But the fight wasn't over yet. Then the ground shook, and the figure of a golem monster appeared, with Rin standing on the golem's body. She is shocked to see her troops slaughtered by Iska and his group. When the golem attacked them, Iska immediately slashed the golem's hand to shreds, then asked his friends to back off to seek help. The golem immediately regenerated his hand and attacked him again. Fortunately, he could still avoid the golem's attack while his friends managed to escape. Iska faced the golem, then removed Rin from the top of the golem's body. She didn't want to give up and tried to fight back, but Iska managed to knock her to the ground and lock her hands. Suddenly, a cold aura appeared, which turned out to be from a witch named Alice. Iska jumped back to be alert. He realized that a strong enemy had arrived in front of him. Instantly, Alice created an ice attack that froze the ground and the surrounding trees. Iska jumped up to avoid her ice attack. Rin told her to be careful because his sword could cut their spirits. She thanked Rin for stalling her time well. Hearing this, Iska realized that while he was fighting, it turned out that Alice had frozen their reactor. Then she introduced herself. She said that she was a descendant of the Great Witch Nebulous. After that, she created a wall of ice launched at Iska. He swiftly jumped back to avoid her attack. After that, he stepped forward to attack, but Alice created hundreds of ice swords launched at him. With his sword, Iska managed to slash every ice blade that was hurtling toward him. Unfortunately, Alice's next 100 ice swords rained down too fast, causing his body to be hit several times. She mocked that Iska had reached his limit, but he denied it. He creates hundreds of swords like her moves, which can destroy all of her ice swords. Then Iska charged forward to attack her, but she created an ice flower to block his sword. Afterward, he bounced back and stood on a tree. He jumped tree after tree to continue his attack, but Alice swiftly created ice bindings to restrain him. It turns out that he can break the ice binder easily, so she jumps onto a cliff to get away from him. The ground that Alice stepped on collapsed, and suddenly, she slipped. Fortunately, Iska quickly caught her body, then asked if she was okay. Alice smiled and said thank you. Then they looked at each other as if a love seed had sprouted. Because she was nervous, she jumped down from his sling and asked Rin to back off. Then she summoned a giant bird, and the two of them went on a ride back to Nebulous. Arriving there, Alice immediately soaked in the warm pool while thinking about Iska. Next, she invites Rin to watch a theatrical performance, and the two of them go together. When the show was going on, Alice was crying because what they were watching was a romance genre show, until someone next to her offered a tissue, and she accepted it. After the show was over and the theater lights were turned on, she realized that the person who had given her the tissue was Iska. Arriving in the middle of the forest, Iska also became difficult to sleep. He left the room and walked down the hall of the headquarters. He suddenly met Miss, who offered him to drink warm tea together in her room. Miss did that as an expression of guilt because, as captain, she couldn't help during the fight. Iska agreed. After talking for a while, she gave him a ticket for Beatrix's nightly love tragedy show, and he accepted it. The next day, Iska was escorted by Nene to Neutral City to watch a theater performance. During the trip, he fell asleep. Then he had a dream about his past. He used to be a student of a man named Croswell Ness Lubigate. At that time, Iska was given 2 swords by him, which could help Iska during his mission in the future. Not long after, Iska woke up from his sleep. He told his dream to Nene along the way. Arriving at the theater, Iska immediately went in, looking for a seat. In the middle of the show, he realized that another woman was crying beside him, so he offered her a tissue. When the show was over and the lights were on, he realized that the girl beside him was Alice. Knowing that, she accused him of following her secretly. Next, Alice and Rin went to a restaurant, and a few moments later, Iska also came to the same restaurant. Because the table was full, he was finally directed to join Alice and Rin's table by the restaurant waiter. They were forced to sit together. When choosing the food menu, it turns out that Alice and Iska have similarities. They both look at each other and blush. Arriving at their respective homes, Iska and Alice couldn't sleep because they had thought about meeting earlier. When Iska manages to fall asleep, he dreams about his past again. He used to be on a mission, but when he was on the train, a group of monsters suddenly blocked his train, taking the train carriage off the track. At that time, the monsters almost captured Iska, but a witch saved him with the power of ice. The next day, Iska gathered and practiced with his friends. Then a woman named Rissia tells them she will lead Iska's team on the next mission. She gave Iska a ticket for the exhibition, which was to be held in the Neutral City. At the same time, Alice met her mother, Miliver Lu Nebulous VIII, to discuss her fight with Iska some time ago. Hearing the story, Miliver felt something suspicious about Iska's power. Then she told the story of the beginning of the formation of the Nebulous Kingdom. In the past, the Great Witch Nebulous, the founder of the kingdom, had a twin sister named Alice Rose, nicknamed Sisho, but the Empire did not know about it. When the Great Witch died, the Empire felt the threat to them had disappeared. But it turns out that the twin sister of the Great Witch Nebulous is still alive and sealed in a crystal. Miliver said that Sisho's binding crystal starts to crack after Alice fights Iska. Hearing that, Alice remembered how Iska could imitate her magic of hundreds of swords. Afterward, she thought maybe it had something to do with the Great Witch Nebulous. The next day, Alice goes to Neutral City to relieve exhaustion, but surprisingly she meets Iska again. They both looked awkward and passed each other. Because of the awkwardness, she even strayed into a dark alley, lucky she could get out of there. But at the end of the road, she met him again. Then he invited her to go with him to see an exhibition. Since then, the two of them seem to be getting closer. At the Empire's headquarters, Iska's team seems very busy taking care of various files. Iska, who had just returned, bought them a drink to make them more relaxed. Afterward, Ricia's face appeared on the monitor screen. She wanted to talk to Iska, and they both chatted. It turns out that he is allowed to clear his reputation to return to being a holy sword knight by capturing the Ice Witch of Destruction. Soon afterward, Iska contemplated in his room. He called Miss and said he couldn't join the training tomorrow because he was going to Neutral City. Miss agrees, but she has to go with him. Alice converses with Rin in the kingdom and tells her information about Iska. It turns out that Iska is the youngest former holy knight in history, but because he freed a witch caught by the Empire, he was removed from his position. Hearing Rin's story, Alice was curious about the identity of the witch who Iska freed. Shortly after Miliver arrived, she recalled the reason they were at war with the Empire. Then Alice asked Rin to get ready to go to Neutral City to meet Iska and asked directly about his reason for freeing the witch. When Alice and Rin arrived in Neutral City, they met Iska and Miss. Alice immediately asked him why he freed a witch a year ago. Iska replied that the witch lost her power after being captured by the Empire. Even so, she thought his actions were the opposite because he fought and tried to restrain her some time ago. Iska explained that his actions aimed to create peace between the Empire and the Nebulous, so he was planning to take one of the direct descendants of Nebulous hostage. Then they negotiate a peace treaty, thus both sides will listen to each other. Even so, Alice said that the Queen wouldn't mind the hostage taking. The only way to make peace was for Iska to be willing to work under her orders. But before he could answer, the sky cracked, and a woman appeared. It turns out that she is a Sisho Nebulous who has been freed from his crystal seal. Not long after, Sisho launched an attack on the four of them. Luckily, they managed to dispel her attack. They were confused as to why Nebulous attacked one of her descendants. After being attacked several times, Rin suffers injuries, so Miss has to take care of her. Then Iska pulled out his two swords and prepared to face Nebulous. Alice gets up and intends to help him. They both advance together to fight Sisho. Even so, the power of the Great Witch was too great. The two of them were overwhelmed by her attacks. Finally, Iska and Alice made a combination attack. Alice made an ice ladder while he climbed the ladder and shot toward Nebulous. With one attack, he managed to hit the Great Witch. As a result, Sisho was forced to retreat and return to the cracks created in the sky, and the fight was over. After that, Iska and Alice lay on the ground from exhaustion. They discussed peace again, and he refused her offer to work as her subordinate. The next day, Iska and friends were gambling at a casino because 2 weeks earlier, Ricia told Miss that her team could take a vacation before the training event was held. Therefore, Miss invites her friends to the casino to get the jackpot. If they win, they will buy a Markova tank model Mi-62 produced by Francesco. While they were gambling, Alice and Rin came there for entertainment. Alice continues to play slots even though her mind is filled with Iska, then unexpectedly, she gets a jackpot and a lot of money from gambling. Afterward, Nene appeared and said that Alice was very lucky. Then, she gave all the prize money to Nene. After getting a lot of money, Nene immediately approached and gave it to her friends. After that, Alice and Rin walked into the city to visit a fortune teller. Alice asks to be predicted about her relationship with Iska. The fortune teller opened 2 cards, then said they had 2 unbreakable bonds. After that, they both left immediately. After they left, Iska came to that place to ask about his relationship with Alice. Then the fortune teller gave the same answer. Sometime later, Ricia suddenly received information about the appearance of the Vortex, a group of people with sacred energy that forms a vortex and can curse or bless people. That's why both the Empire and Nebulous are vying for it. Then Ricia was asked by the Emperor to order Iska's team to take care of the Vortex problem. They had to carry out the mission and get the Vortex that had just appeared. On the other hand, Rin told Alice about Vortex's appearance. They discussed with Zoa, descended from another branch of the family. They think that Zoa seems to be deliberately hiding the information because she wants to control it for personal gain. After that, they meet a man named Lord Mask, Zoa's closest person. They ask about Vortex's information, and he provides information that convinces Alice and Rin about their reasons for keeping the information secret. The next day, Iska and friends gathered in a place, along with another team, to look for the whereabouts of Vortex. A mission commander is a man named Nameless who wears a suit of armor. He gathered the soldiers and assigned them the task of securing Vortex before the other party overtook them. If they fail to secure Vortex and are already captured by the other party, then their task is to destroy Vortex. The soldiers immediately began to search. Iska's team has been looking for Vortex everywhere but hasn't been able to find it. Then Miss received information that a team lost communication while searching for Vortex. Afterward, Nameless sent 2 other squads to look for the missing team, but both teams suddenly lost communication. As a result, all the teams were asked to gather at the headquarters. But it turns out that Nameless has no intention of saving the missing team. Iska asks him about his decision. However, Nameless ignores Iska because he has a lower rank than himself. Elsewhere, Lord Mask meets one of the Zoa family. They were planning something and getting ready to launch their action. Not long after, Alice and Rin arrived where Vortex was. Then Lord Mask and Zoa met the two until an argument between Alice and Lord Mask broke out. She felt that he seemed to be hiding something. On the other hand, Iska's team suspected the witches might not have caught the missing team. While searching for the missing squad, they must find Vortex. Soon they saw a burst of light in the distance. They were sure it was from Vortex, so they rushed towards it. On the way, they met a team led by a woman named Shanorode Gregory. But there seems to be something suspicious about the team. Shanorode admits that she is Nebula's subordinate. Even her entire team is a member of witches. Suddenly, Nameless appears and takes out Shanorode's squad from the Empire's army. She took her team away, but she had injured Miss, held her hostage, and fled from there. After that, Nameless immediately returned to headquarters, while Iska and friends went to look for Miss to save her. A few moments later, Shanorode arrived at the Vortex location with Miss. Alice recognizes Miss and vice versa, so the situation doesn't get more chaotic. Rin hits Miss until she loses consciousness. After that, Rin and Alice left Vortex to find Iska. On the other hand, Iska and his group made it to the enemy's base. They secretly sneaked in until they arrived in front of Shanorode. Not long after that, Zoa came and took over the fight, so they both fought fiercely. Meanwhile, Alice and Rin waited for Iska at the Empire's army base, which seemed empty. Soon Nene arrived at the base, which was followed by the presence of Nameless. As a result, the fight between Alice and Nameless was unavoidable. They both attacked each other and looked balanced. Alice created hundreds of ice swords that charged toward Nameless, but he managed to fend off every attack. Then Alice uses her ice power to freeze whatever is around her. Not wanting to hurt, Nameless finally escapes. On the other hand, Iska and Zoa fought to a draw. Even so, she finally launched her destructive attack, which overwhelmed him. He still managed to advance by stabbing her stomach. Not long after that, Lord Mask appeared and directly stabbed Iska in the back. After that, Lord Mask immediately kicked Miss' body into Vortex. Not wanting his partner to get hurt, Iska jumped and followed her into Vortex. He tried to reach her, but the distance was too far. Suddenly Alice appears and immediately jumps into Vortex to save Iska and Miss. After the three of them entered, Vortex exploded violently. Even so, surprisingly, Iska, Miss, and Alice managed to survive the explosion. But even more surprising, Alice fell in a different place from Iska and Miss. Because of the explosion, Jin and Nene finally found Iska and Miss, who had fallen. When Iska opened his eyes, he realized he had found a crystal in his hand. Arriving at the kingdom, Alice still thinks about Iska constantly. She misses him very much, and she wants to see him again. Seeing Alice, who seemed to be suffering, Ren advised her to go to Neutral City in hopes of meeting Iska. On the other hand, Miss apologized to her team members because she was caught by the enemy, causing them problems, but her friends said it was not her fault. Then she felt her arm hurt greatly, but she didn't mind it and tried to ignore it. Afterward, Rissia went into their room to give them the next mission information. It turns out that the mission is to capture the Nebulous Queen, but Iska and friends think it's just a joke. But Rissia says they will carry out the mission in the next 3 days if it's not a joke. Meanwhile, Rin and Alice had arrived at Neutral City. They went around the city but couldn't find Iska's whereabouts. Even though they had been waiting for him for 3 days, there was still no sign of his appearance. Alice suggested to Rin to split up to find him faster. Rin is secretly planning to end Alice's relationship with Iska. At the Empire's headquarters, Miss's arm ached even more. When it was opened, it turned out that there was a suspicious green symbol. It became an astral symbol belonging to a witch that somehow appeared there. Miss tried to convince herself that it was just an ordinary wound, but in the end, she accepted that it was an astral symbol. After knowing this, her team members were worried for Miss safety. If her condition is known to the higher-ups of the Empire, then she will be executed. Jin believes that the spirit's power has possessed Miss' body since she left Vortex, and for her safety, they will hide her condition from the higher-ups of the Empire. Not long after that, when Miss wasn't around, the team members discussed the current situation. Iska got the idea to take her for a walk to the Neutral City so that she felt better. The next day they went to Neutral City. When they got there, Miss felt calmer. They chatted from heart to heart while sitting on a park bench. A few moments later, she went to buy drinks, and at the same time, Alice suddenly appeared in front of Iska. Although initially reluctant, Alice eventually agreed to sit next to Iska on the bench. They both talked for a while. Not long after, Rin appeared behind the two of them, suddenly making Alice uncomfortable. She didn't seem to care about the situation and gave canned drinks to Alice and Iska. After drinking the drink, he suddenly fainted. It turned out that Rin had given sleeping pills into his drink. Alice is angry, but Rin reminds her that Iska is their enemy. Rin intends to take Iska away, but then Miss appears and tries to stop them. Miss was unexpectedly able to launch a magic attack, but they were not hurt at all. Alice issued her ice magic which immediately paralyzed Miss. After that, the two of them went to take Iska away. At the Empire's headquarters, Risia reported to someone called the male emperor named Yunmungen. She said that the Ice Witch of Destruction had caught Iska. On the other hand, Alice suggested they should not take Iska to the palace on their way back from Neutral City. She ordered Rin to go to the nearest town from the nebulous territory, and Rin obeyed. On the other hand, Risia informed Apostle the 8 of Iska's condition. Based on the information obtained, he was taken to an area of 13 nebulous sovereignty, namely Alcatraz City, where the nebulous rebels are held. In that city, Salinger's strongest witch was arrested because he once fought the queen. Risia said that if they freed Salinger, it would benefit the Empire. After that, Risia met with Miss and friends to deliver a rescue mission. They will disguise themselves as witches and enter Alcatraz City. Besides that, she brought a tool that could print astral marks on the body so that they could blend together perfectly. Jin admired the tool created by the Empire as he approached Miss and put the tool on his shoulder so that the real condition of Miss would not be known. He said the astral marks on her arms looked genuine, so they were ready to carry out rescue operations. In Nebulous, Iska is taken to a luxury hotel by Alice and Rin. There, they chatted so that he couldn't run away. A few moments later, Alice went to her room while Rin watched Iska. That's when Rin harms herself with a knife. She is about to accuse Iska of attacking her, so she has a reason to kill him. Rin acts by trying to kill him using her knife. In a state of handcuffs, Iska was trying to avoid her attack. In the hotel room, Alice was looking at the menu book, remembering when she was at the restaurant with Iska. She immediately went to his room. Upon arrival, she is shocked to see Rin almost kill him. Alice stopped her. Then Alice decided to tie Iska with a chain whose ends were tied to her hands so that he couldn't escape. Afterward, Rin left them. After Rin left, Iska discussed what if one of them had to go to the bathroom. Alice was surprised and did not think about it. Not long after that, Alice moved the chain on her body into Rin's hand. Then she left to take a shower. When she finished bathing, Alice, wearing only a towel, immediately went to meet Iska and Rin. There, Iska saw the astral markings on Alice's back. He said that Miss had similar marks. Alice explained that the mark was a symbol of a witch. Meanwhile, Miss and her friends managed to escape the surveillance of Nebulous because they had astral markings. They rushed to infiltrate the prison area to look for Iska, but they couldn't find his whereabouts anywhere. At that time, Jin felt that something was suspicious because Risia was on the other side of the prison. Then they managed to find Salinger, who was being held captive. Salinger was a little surprised when Risia could arrive at his place, and that's when she explained what she wanted. The Empire is planning a massive invasion of the Nebulous, hoping to get help from Salinger. The Empire wants him to get revenge on Miliver because she has kept him locked up all this time. Even so, it turns out that Salinger is not interested in revenge, but he will not refuse if she helps him escape. At that moment, Risia freed him. At the hotel, Iska looks like he can't sleep. He goes to the balcony to see the city view. Soon Alice came to see him discuss how dangerous the criminals in Nebulous prison were. She discusses Salinger as the most dangerous criminal so far. Then Rin appears and informs that an intruder has entered the border area. On the other hand, the prison alarm immediately went off, and Miss and her friends tried desperately to escape from the guards. A huge explosion appeared shortly after that shook the whole building. At that moment, Risia called the Miss team and informed them that Iska was not in prison. After that, they tried to run away from there. At the hotel, Rin informs Alice that Salinger has escaped. They both immediately went to prison to resolve the situation. Alice asked Iska for help, but before he answered, she gave him a folded handkerchief and left. While inside the prison area, Jin offers himself as bait so that Miss and Nene can escape. But then, Miss jumped forward and caught the guards' attention. When the attention of the guards was distracted, Nene paralyzed them all. Meanwhile, Iska gets a call from Miss, who informs them of their current condition. Not long after, he remembered the handkerchief that Alice had left. He took it and found the key behind the fold of her handkerchief. With the key, he managed to release his handcuffs. After that, he rushed off to catch up with Alice and Rin. Arriving at the prison, Alice and Rin see the situation is already chaotic. She tries to overcome the situation while Rin runs to find the whereabouts of the escaped Salinger. Not long after, Iska arrived at the prison and met his friends. Miss gave him a sword and immediately ran to the prison to help Alice and Rin. On the other hand, Rin had met with Salinger. They immediately fight, and she creates a ground golem to attack him. However, his power is too powerful, and Rin is overwhelmed and almost injured. But when Iska comes to save her, Rin warns him that their enemy is a very dangerous person. But Iska didn't care because only by facing Salinger could he go home. He asks her to promise that if he can beat Salinger, he and his friends can go home safely. Even though she didn't like it, Rin finally agreed. While Salinger wondered why the people of the Empire wanted to protect Rin, Salinger didn't care and agreed to fight Iska. Salinger snapped his fingers and created a huge explosion around him. On the other hand, Sisbell was looking up at the sky outside the palace. Soon a man named Schwartz appeared to see her, and she asked him what was happening. He informed that there were witnesses who saw the assassin squad from the Empire infiltrate Nebulous. At the same time, Salinger had escaped from prison. Schwartz said he and his team are investigating the link between the two. Schwartz then said there was one thing that caught his attention. It turned out that Alice took direct command there. This proves that everything is not a coincidence. Back to Iska, who had started fighting against Salinger. He managed to survive Salinger's first attack. Salinger shouted at him because Iska could cut his magic attacks. Salinger snapped his fingers, and his attack directly hit the injured Rin. Then he launched his attack on Iska, but Iska jumped back to avoid it. After that, Iska leaped forward to slash at him. However, the wind wave blocked his attack. Iska was bounced back and immediately alerted. Shortly after, Iska goes back forward, but it turns out that Salinger can use earth magic. Iska jumped to avoid the flying chunks of earth. He moved from one block to another and tried to attack Salinger. He managed to arrive in front of Salinger and then tried to slash him, but Salinger dodged his attack, and he created a fire explosion from the ground. Then, Iska jumped back to avoid the attack. To help him, Rin tried to get up even though her body was badly injured. She tries to join the fight against Salinger. Meanwhile, outside, Alice was giving orders to the guards. When a sudden attack appeared, she dodged and launched her ice attack. It turns out that Nameless has come and is preparing to attack her. After arguing for a while, Alice launched an icy attack, but Nameless jumped and dodged onto a building. She is annoyed and asks him to come down and confront her head-on. Nameless said that he would fight her after Salinger passed that place, then he left because his mission was complete. After Nameless left, Alice felt a huge explosion from somewhere. She turned and saw Salinger, who was facing Iska. Salinger launched a combined attack of strength in his right and left hands. A burst of ice and fire rushed towards Iska. He immediately jumped and slashed the attack, but he wondered why the jet of water had become more intense. Salinger said that Iska had broken the balance of fire and ice, so the fire became bigger. Suddenly, Iska was hit by a very powerful fire explosion. When he was successfully removed, Salinger explained his goal to Rin. He wanted to combine the power between humans and spirits. So far, only 2 people could reach that level, one of which was the founder of Nebulous. He wants to reach that level. Salinger didn't want to waste any more time. He prepared to attack Rin, but that's when Iska appeared from below and was ready to attack Salinger. Iska thrust, but Salinger was able to jump to avoid it. He wondered why Iska was able to survive his devastating attack. Iska said that the 2 swords had different powers. One could cut through a spirit, and the other could imitate a spirit technique once. Then they both chase each other until they arrive at the top of the building. Salinger realized that Iska imitated the ice technique to survive the fire explosion. He jumps up and throws his powerful attack on Iska. Fortunately, Rin created a giant golem to withstand the attack that was about to hit Iska. Salinger is annoyed and immediately attacks her, but hundreds of ice crystals are created and block his attack. Alice appears and helps them defeat Salinger. Meanwhile, Iska immediately jumped up and attacked Salinger. Not to be outdone, Salinger created swords of light in both hands, but he easily slashed Salinger's 2 swords of light. Not wanting to be defeated by Iska, he dropped himself into a large and deep well below him. The conflict with Salinger is now over. After overcoming the situation in prison, Alice and Rin immediately went to the palace to report to the queen. Meanwhile, Nameless finally arrived at the base. When he opened the helmet, it turned out that Rissia was a person disguised as him. She met with the real Nameless to discuss the current situation. At that time, they discussed the Emperor, who was very interested in Iska. A few moments later, Rissia and Nameless reported to Apostle the Eight. It turned out that they intended to confuse the Nebulous with the Salinger incident. So far, everything is going smoothly according to their plan. While Rin was talking with Alice to discuss the current situation, they discussed Iska and what will happen after this incident. Rin wants to acknowledge him. Unbeknownst to them, Sisbell was secretly watching their conversation. At the headquarters, Rissia and Nameless were facing the Emperor. They discussed the situation. Soon they were discussing a rare event that occurs once a year. The Emperor said that finally, there was one sword knight from the Empire who had a relationship with the successor to the Nebulous throne. Sometime later, Sisbell was called by her mother, namely Miliver. She was assigned to go to a country outside the control of the Nebulous and the Empire. She had to investigate something. Sisbell was willing to accept the mission. On the other hand, Iska and his group were on vacation for a while because they had worked very well. They went on vacation to a free country and had fun when they got there. In the afternoon, when Iska was alone, he was hit by someone from behind. Upon seeing that person, he was surprised because the person who bumped into her was Sisbell. On the other hand, she was surprised because now she had met someone she had been looking for. Shortly after, Nene appeared, and Sisbell immediately left them. Afterward, Sisbell met Schwartz and said she had found the person she had been looking for. Soon after, she investigated where Iska was staying. She even planned to meet him and wanted to say something. In the kingdom, Alice is met by her mother. They discuss Sisbell's behavior, which had been shutting herself in for the past year. Suspicious, they went to search her room. While looking for something suspicious, Alice saw an old newspaper reporting Iska being arrested for freeing a witch. She was curious as to why Sisbell knew something about him. On the other hand, Sisbell manages to find out where Iska is staying. She went to the hotel, then looked for his room. She managed to find him and entered his room, but a surprised Iska immediately locked her body on the floor. He suspects that Nebulous sent her to kill him, but turned out that she just wants to thank and see him. Besides that, Sisbell made a request. She wanted Iska to accompany her back to Nebulous. He recognizes Sisbell as the witch he saved a year ago. She introduced herself and was very happy that he still remembered her. Meanwhile, Alice discusses with Rin about Sisbell finding out about Iska. They thought Sisbell had eavesdropped on their conversation regarding Iska, and she knew Alice's closeness with him, so she suspected Alice of being a spy for the Empire. In the hotel room, Sisbell thanked Iska for saving her a year ago. She used to be afraid that he who freed her was just a trap from the Empire. That's why she asked permission to thank him at this time, even though she gave an expensive bracelet to Iska, but he refused. He said his reason for saving Sisbell wasn't to get a reward. She kept her bracelet back. She said after the incident 1 year ago, she saw the news in the newspaper about him. The news turned out to be spread everywhere throughout the neutral city. Iska asked who Sisbell was, but she replied that she was only a palace maid. He asked why he had to accompany her. She should have servants or subordinates if she is close to a noble family. But Sisbell said that she had no subordinates and didn't trust anyone. After saying all that, she left him. After Sisbell left, Iska saw her bracelet that was left on his bed. Then he took it. In the kingdom, Alice and Rin meet the queen. They said they couldn't find any clues in Sisbell's room. After that, they begged to be allowed to travel. Because Sisbell was in a foreign land, Alice wanted to meet her so she could have a heart-to-heart conversation. Fortunately, the queen gave permission, and then they immediately rushed to prepare for their departure. At headquarters, Apostle the Eight is conducting negotiations. They learned that a pure blood witch descended from Nebulous was in a free country alone. She was only accompanied by a male servant, so they immediately carried out a witch capture operation. The next day, Iska and his group moved to another hotel. One afternoon, he met again with Sisbell. They went somewhere. There she says that she is descended from the queen, but the queen is currently in danger. There is one descendant of the Nebulous who wants to kill him. Besides that, the traitor has a plan to destroy the world. After killing the queen, the traitor's first step is to attack the empire. If that happens, then both countries will certainly be destroyed. With her spirit power, Sisbell will know all about it, but she doesn't know who the traitor is. That's why she can't trust anyone in Nebulous. She asked Iska for help because she did not want to see the two countries at war with each other and create destruction in both camps. She couldn't accept that the traitor had taken control of Nebulous. She asked Iska to stop the big war that was about to happen. Hearing all that, he could only be stunned and silent. Meanwhile, Alice finally arrived in the land of the free. She looked for the address of the hotel where Sisbell was staying. Soon Schwartz came and met her. He asks if Alice has seen Sisbell as he tries to contact Sisbell, but he can't. Back to Iska, he said he didn't want a big war to happen. Even so, he couldn't help Sisbell. But she did not give up and said if the queen were killed, the traitor would seize her power so that a big war would happen. That's when Iska said that was the difference between them. Sisbell wanted to stop the Great War, but Iska had a bigger goal. He wanted to stop the hundreds of years of conflict, and she asked how. Iska said the way was through a peace treaty, but according to Sisbell, that was impossible. Because the Nebulists will never forget the Empire's crimes against them, they will never forgive the Empire. Iska said that he already knew that. That was the reason he fought. He tried to convince Sisbell that in Nebulous, there was someone else she could rely on. But before their conversation was over, Lord Mask suddenly appeared behind her. It turns out that Lord Mask thinks Sisbell is the traitor because he is with Iska. Lord Mask said the queen's heart must have been broken after knowing her daughter was with Iska. Sisbell explains that she wants to find the real traitor, but Lord Mask still thinks she is the traitor. Then she ran away from that place, while Iska just sat there and stood alone without knowing what to do. Meanwhile, Sisbell, who was running, was startled by the appearance of a giant figure. A large robot appeared and confronted her. Iska recognized the robot. He tries to help her but is blocked by Lord Mask. Not long after that, Jin, Nene, and Miss came. They were surprised when they saw the robot, which was an experimental weapon of the Empire named Object. When Object analyzes the existence of the witches, all those with astral markings will be destroyed. Unfortunately, Miss was detected as the owner of the astral sign. Even so, Object's main priority was to kill Sisbell first. She ran away from Object, but the robot immediately jumped after her. Iska wants to help Sisbell, but Lord Mask always gets in his way. Jin and the others go down and take over the fight against Lord Mask's troops. Iska received his sword and then ran to save her. He arrived just in time and managed to cut through the attack from Object. Suddenly, Nene appears there and will help the fight. Afterward, Iska slashed his sword, but Object's body turned out to be very hard. He tried to attack from various directions, but all of his slashes were meaningless. The moment Nene launched her attack, various bullets shot straight into Object's body. Meanwhile, Jin is fighting against Lord Mask. The attack managed to injure his arm. Even so, it managed to shoot Lord Mask. Unfortunately, his bullet could only hit the tool in Lord Mask's pocket. Moments later, Lord Mask's men threw a barrel filled with fuel. He and his troops jumped back, and one of his troops created fire to blow up the barrel. But when he was about to do the action, suddenly the fire went out. It turned out that Miss activated her wind magic from a distance that could extinguish the witch's fire. That's when Jin shot his gun into Lord Mask's face, so his mask was broken. Unfortunately, the bullet didn't hurt his face. As a result, Lord Mask and his troops retreated. While Nene's attack failed to destroy Object, the battle resumed. Object used secondary energy, then created a ball of light in its mouth. Sisbell realized that it was the spirit's power. Seeing that, Iska wondered what was hidden inside Object's body. That's when Object shot out a very powerful spirit ball. Luckily, Iska managed to get Sisbell out of the deadly blast. However, Object immediately recharged and prepared for its next attack. Thankfully, Nene immediately launched an attack and managed to stop Object. Even so, her attacks did not get to Object at all. Iska then stepped forward to face him, but he moved quickly to dodge the attack. Shortly after that, Iska jumped on top of Object. At the same time, Sisbell released her strength to help him. She created a barrier to prevent Object from spitting out his attacks, while Iska shot down and stabbed his sword into Object's weak point. Iska finally managed to overthrow the giant robot. Unfortunately, the battle was not over. Object's body suddenly melted, and a mysterious light appeared. Then he transformed into a very powerful robot. Iska advanced against him, who was already in the new mode. Sadly, Iska was overwhelmed because Object had tremendous power and speed. At the crucial moment, Alice suddenly appeared and threw her ice attack at Object. As a result, Iska survived death, and the two of them worked together, Alice creating various ice attacks and hundreds of crystals to attack Object. Then, Iska jumped from ice crystal to head toward Object. But, he managed to escape and was able to throw Iska back. After a while, Object launched a sudden, powerful attack. Alice immediately created an ice flower to block his attack. After the attack was dispelled, Object launched a series of subsequent attacks. Not wanting the situation to worsen, Alice and Iska teamed up. They charged forward while charging at the incoming attack. Not long after, they launched a magic attack together. The combination of attacks successfully grabbed Object's body, destroying him. Not long after, Sisbell's body finally fell from the wrecked remains of Object's body. When she woke up, Sisbell asked if Alice knew Iska. Suddenly, she replied that she did not know him. Hearing that, Sisbell asked Alice not to lie, but she insisted on not knowing him. Meanwhile, Iska said that he didn't know Alice either. Then, Sisbell was grateful and then held his hand. She said that Iska was the ideal knight to be her partner. Hearing that, Alice immediately felt embarrassed and looked jealous. Alice asked what Sisbell meant, but Sisbell replied that it was none of her business. Not long after, Iska's friends came, and Iska said goodbye and went to meet his friends, and the conflict ended. At the headquarters, Rissia and Nameless were discussing the weapons made by Apostle VIII, which turned out to be very dangerous. After that, they wondered where the current emperor was. The scene changes to a forest area where Salinger escaped. He is attracted by the power of Iska. Not long after, the emperor visited him. It turned out that Salinger recognized him and mentioned the emperor's name, namely Emperor Yumongen. The emperor said that he wanted to talk to him about many things. Meanwhile, Queen Nebulous met her first daughter, Aliceliese Nebulous IX. It turns out she had been suspicious all along that Aliceliese was the one who betrayed her. Even so, she cannot take action because there is no evidence. At that time, the queen knew Aliceliese had instigated Lord Mask into thinking Sisbell was the traitor. On the other hand, Alice and Iska were sitting on the park bench of the neutral city. They spent the afternoon talking by the fountain. When it was almost night, they separated and returned to their respective countries. This is the end of the anime. The moral that can be learned is not to carry past grudges into the future because it will only destroy future generations of those who are innocent and not in direct conflict.